Hey nerds, I'm back with another breakdown of Only Murders in the Building. Episode 5, entitled Adaptation, continues the show's tradition this season of naming each episode after a famous movie. And this time, it's the 2002 Spike Jonze film. Does this episode crack the case wide open? Let's dive into it right now. Welcome back to the Unresolved Show. I'm Nathan. As always, if you want to jump ahead of this intro to my analysis or rating, see the chapter links below. So, this is the 5th episode of Season 4. Should be posted on September 23rd. Things are heating up, and the trio is finally starting to piece together the clues. But does this episode make the case? Let's find out. The spoiler-free logline for this episode is, in Adaptation, the trio face off against a collection of individuals who deceive, manipulate, and threaten as second nature. A Hollywood cast and crew. Let's start breaking down this episode. Spoilers ahead. So, as I said, this week's title is a reference to Adaptation from 2002, which was a unique and genre-bending comedy drama directed by Spike Jonze and written by Charlie Kaufman. The film is a surreal and self-referential exploration of the creative process, blending fact and fiction as it delves into the mind of a screenwriter struggling with his own insecurities and writer's block. It starred Nicolas Cage, Meryl Streep, Chris Cooper, and Tilda Swinton. So we start this episode with a voiceover from Marshall in his apartment. Marshall reflects on what makes a writer feel legitimate. He embraces the look of an intellectual, but battles his imposter syndrome. Even as he gets his big break, his insecurity remains despite the validation. So in a nod to the title, Charlie Kaufman is the person that Marshall idolizes in this scene. I really like the framing device of this week. It ties, as I said, right into that plot of Adaptation, and they don't have framing devices every week, but when they do, they tend to weave them into the themes of the episodes very well. In the next scene, we continue on from where we ended up in the last episode. In a tense encounter at Zaz's academy, Bev Mellon pulls a gun on the trio, but quickly drops the facade and says that the gun is not loaded, although it is loaded. And Bev's behavior becomes more erratic as she talks about the movie and potential problems. As I alluded to in my spoiler-free review, and the link is above if you haven't checked that out, Alex Shannon is hilarious in this scene. So after the credits, the trio interrogate Bev. Bev reflects on questions about Zaz's murder, revealing her alibi, and also that she received a voicemail from Zaz the night of her murder about the movie. She admits her focus is more on saving the production than guilt about Zaz's death, which is where Charles's mind is. So I find this interesting because it seems Zaz knew about the production well before the trio did. We did see in the first episode that they had a writer, directors, and a cast before the trio visited, so it seems to have been in the works for a while. It's a mystery why Zaz didn't tell Charles about the movie. So later at Charles's apartment, the trio shared their suspicions with Detective Williams. Despite her frustration with their amateurish methods, Charles relays that someone involved in the movie may have killed Zaz based on their conversation with Mellon. Williams takes the gun for analysis, and we find out that the arm that Oliver has been worried about in the previous episode in the pictures with his girlfriend belong to an Olympian. The joke here about Charles's tax evasion is funny, but also another highlight that these baby boomers are very rich. Later, the trio investigate the production offices, suspecting the people involved in the movie. This is the scene where the tacky mats are introduced to come up later on. This is also the scene where the trio are invited to a photo shoot by the very weird brothers, sisters, and also where they land on Marshall as a suspect after taking pictures of the production team. Mabel hangs back and has a conversation with Bev about developing her next big idea as a podcaster. I'm still not super keen on the insecure Mabel, which they introduced in the first episode of the season. I might be misremembering, but I don't recall her being this insecure in the previous seasons. She had to talk herself into saying that she's a podcast producer in an early earlier scene of this episode, which seems ridiculous given that they've solved 3 murders already and their podcast is being turned into a movie, but whatever. After an interaction with Glenn Subbins in the hallway, Marshall is interrogated by the trio about his whereabouts during Zaz's murder. While distracted by Charles' praise for his script, he insists he's innocent, revealing his insecurities about being a writer. The trio decide to test Charles's murder timeline theory, which Marshall questions. Born out of insecurity about the Olympian, Oliver tries to reenact the murder within 12 minutes, but fails, taking 28 minutes to even get to the apartment, let alone reenact the disposal of the body. This realization undermines Charles's timeline theory and suggests someone very physically capable committed the crime. Mabel discovers matching shoe prints in the photos Charles took earlier that tie the production office to the crime scene. This reenaction sequence with John Macro in the middle of it was also pretty funny. In the next scene, the trio arrive at a chaotic photo shoot where they set a trap with tacky mats and the help of Longoria, and they notice another clue, particularly the shoe print matching those at the crime scene belonging to one of the directors. Charles realizes that the murder might have been committed by a duo. This is actually something that someone suggested in the comments of our episode 2 breakdown weeks ago. By the time I did that week's review, I actually hadn't seen this episode yet, even though, as I said in previous reviews, I've seen up to episode 7 so far, and they actually a couple days ago sent me 8 and 9. I haven't seen those 2 yet. So I was really impressed with your sleuthing ability, guys. Good work. B-Master 247 and only Rick 3. Anyway, we end the episode with Charles and Mabel realizing that the brother-sisters could be behind the murder as they notice the matching shoe print and envision the scenario where one of the directors shoots and another clean up the scene. As they turn to confront them, a gunshot rings out, cutting to black. Very dramatic ending, and yes, I know what happens next, but we'll leave that for next week's breakdown. Okay, since there were a few clues in this episode, I'm going to run down the resolved and unresolved issues or clues in this episode like I did last week. So the resolved list, Bev Mellon is cleared of suspicion for Zaz's murder. She admits she didn't call Zaz back despite receiving a voicemail, but she was at a 100 Women Under 100 event. The shoe print found in Dudenoff's apartment where Zaz was shot from matches the production office mat and also one of the directors. I really can't tell the difference between Tawny and Trina. Also, Oliver's timeline test shows that this murder probably couldn't have been perpetrated by one person. Unresolved things. We still don't know who killed Zaz, although by the end of this episode, the brother-sisters are under suspicion. The episode ends without definitively confirming the killer's identity. The possibility of the directors acting as a duo, one shooting Zaz and the other cleaning up, remains unsolved. The other thing that's unresolved is what the problem is on the movie. Zaz's voicemail, as I mentioned earlier, indicates that there was a serious issue on the movie set, but the nature of that is unclear. We still don't know what the motive of the killer was, whether or not they were going after Charles or if they were going after Zaz, maybe because she found out something about the movie and someone was trying to cover up the problems there. We have a second theory here, but this is also unconfirmed. There's strong evidence pointing to this based upon the test that Oliver tried to run earlier in the episode. And of course, the gunshot at the end left us on a cliffhanger, so we don't know who the target was and whether anyone was injured. A more personal note, Marshall's feelings of insecurity as a writer are explored, but whether this plays a deeper role in the murder investigation or just adds to his character development remains unclear at this point. And finally, Detective Williams is gathering more information about the gun from the crime scene, but her findings aren't revealed by the end of this episode, leaving this aspect of the investigation unsolved. So, have you been watching Only Murders in the Building Season 4? What did you think of episodes 5's twists and humor? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like and share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of film and TV. See you in the next one, guys. Bye.